All right, 1 second here. All right, welcome everyone. Holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 16. Again, want to welcome everyone holding by Book of Leviticus Chapter 16. We're still in verse 4, and actually we're going to finish up verse 4. So Torah told me, we're speaking about the linen vestments and why the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, wore linen vestments in the Holy of Holies by Yom Kippur, not during the rest of the year. We spoke quite a bit about that. So here, again, the Torah tells me, Book of Leviticus chapter 16, verse 4, Ketonas bad kodesh, yilbash miknasei bad, yiyu al bisaro, v'avneit bad yachkor, mitznefes bad yitzno, bigdei kodeshem, rachat b'mayim es bisaro levesha. So here the Torah says, he's going to wear a sacred linen of ketonas, linen of pants, linen that should be upon his flesh. He'll gird himself with a linen avnei, cover his head with a linen mitznefes. Whole question, that means cover his whole head, part of his head. They are sacred garments, meaning that they had to be sanctified to the temple before they could be used. He shall immerse his flesh in the water and then don them. Right? Every time, there were 5 times in the service that he changed his clothes, he'd have to go to the mikvah, as we saw. Right? So says Mori Rebbe, Arav going to Moshe Shlita should be well. And he brings down in Tam Vadas his commentary on Chumash. And he has the following. It says over here that they're Big Day Kodesh. They are sanctified clothing, meaning they have to be sanctified to the temple before they can be used. Right? Because obviously they weren't. The question over here is, why is it telling me that they're sacred garments? Well, of course they're sacred garments because the high priest is going to wear them. Right? He's going to wear them when he goes to the Holy of Holies. So it means they have to be consecrated. We said before, it has to be consecrated to the temple, i.e. donated, whatever, to the temple itself, to the Mishkan, in order to be used. Right? That's what the Torah is telling me. So it says, Ma'avar Rebbe, he says, what simple explanation? He says, simple explanation is, the Torah is telling you that these clothing, these vestments, these holy vestments have to be sanctified. Right? That's what we saw. Right? That's what we saw before. And he says that comes along, and he quotes the Sforno, one of the great commentaries on Chumash. And the Sforno over here says, and he explains that the clothing, the vestments of the high priest on Yom Kippur are similar, the vestments are similar to Malachim, to angels, to prophets. In other words, we're talking about wearing special clothing that they can have the status in many ways of angels that we're going to see. Right? They don't eat. Right? The Kohen Gadol doesn't eat, doesn't drink. Right? Fasting. Angels don't eat, etc. On the level of a prophet over here, etc. So, what's the obvious question? Obvious question here is, how can it be like an angel? How can it be clothing similar to an angel? So he says, they can't be clothing of an angel. An angel is a spiritual force. Spiritual forces don't have clothing, right? They don't eat, they don't drink, they don't have clothing. So what's he talking about? So he says that the clothing of an angel, the clothing is external. right? That's what clothing is. We get caught up sometimes in labels, what a person wears. They wear a white shirt, black pants, with or without pinstripes, obviously for a guy, dark blue, dark gray, different things, different clothing that we're going to identify with a certain community. For the Orthodox community, they don't necessarily wear white shirts all the time. They might wear blue, might wear other colors, so to speak. But people identify with certain types of communities. Now, obviously, a person has to find out or figure out, where they think they're going to fit in, into what type of community. And then, you sort of have to know the lingo, sort of have to know, like, if you're going to, person wants to be part of an Orthodox community, usually they wear white and black, right? Certainly for a guy, a suit, right? Whether it's with or without pinstripes, dark blue, black, gray, certain colors there. If it's a mixed community, person, let's say, they identify more with a more modern community. So for a guy, he's not going to wear a suit, right? Not necessarily going to wear a suit, every day. Certainly not going to wear a white shirt every day, right? But again, these are externals. Now, in the bigger scheme of things, externals don't mean a whole lot. At the same time, we look at what a person wears. Now, does that mean anything about what's in their heart? No. You can have people that dress the part, walk the walk, talk the talk. They're not so religious. Because the other people, they wear, cut jeans and other things, and they may have a lot more fear of heaven. They just don't dress the part. Right? But a person who wants to get their kids into certain schools, you got to dress the part. Now, a person can say, it's not fair, it's not this. You got to dress the part. They know that, you know that. So, externals, again, I think people get, caught up in it. But it's important for someone who wants to identify with the community. And if you identify, let's say, in an Orthodox community, and that's the only community around, and that's the one you want to be a part of, so you have to dress the part. Because if you don't dress the part, you're in trouble. Kids won't get into school. I mean, there are issues. There are definite issues. Again, you're going to say, didn't you just say, wow, it's all about externals? Again, person wants to identify with the community. So I've spoken about this at length. I have a whole video on YouTube about it. Difference between Chabad, now they're Orthodox and modern Orthodox, and all that. So, it depends on how a person wants to identify. Right? Who they want to identify with. But he's saying over here that an angel doesn't have clothing. For sure doesn't have clothing. So he says, how can you compare these clothing to the clothing of an angel? So he already said, we alluded to this, on Yom Kippur, he's like an angel. Purely spiritual. As the commentary is going to explain later in verse 17, right? Any person not allowed in the tent of meeting, but the high priest is allowed. Why is he allowed? Why is he allowed over here? Because that's his service. That's what he's supposed to do. Right? That's exactly what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to go inside the Holy of Holies. But he's only supposed to go in one day a year. That's on Yom Kippur. So basically, he's going to go in and we're going to see why the clothing over here shouldn't really seem to matter. Right? But he's going to go into the Holy of Holies until he's not even really considered human. Then he's going to be considered really something spiritual. A spiritual entity, not human. You say, what happened? All of a sudden, he put on these vestments. He goes in and it's like he's not human anymore. Right? Now what's going on over here? So Maravi brings down a medrash. He brings down a medrash and he says that when the high priest went in to the Holy of Holies, what is the Holy of Holies representative of? Holy of Holies is representative of Gan Eden, of paradise. Why? Because in the book of Genesis tells me that the Garden of Eden was in the east, and you had the cherubs, and they had these flaming swords going up and down, right? What were they guarding? Tree of life. Why the tree of life? Because now that Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge. They eat from the tree of life, they don't get atonement. Because what happened when they eat from the tree of knowledge? Man has to die. There's a decree. Now dying is an atonement, right? Not a full atonement, but it's an atonement. So if that's true, what do I see over here? That if man is going to eat from the tree of life, then how are they going to get their soul fixed? They're going to live forever without atonement. That can't happen. Right? So God throws them out. Throws them out of the garden for that reason. Anyway, my Rebbe was pointing out, you got these cherubs, and you got these flaming swords, so to speak, guarding the tree, make sure they're not going to eat from the tree. The tree of life. Now, once Kohen Gadol goes in, how does he go into the Holy of Holies? So you're going to say, he walks in, he's got the vestments. So here, it says like this, he walks in as a soul. He walks in as a soul without a body. Now, how does that work? Good question. But he walks in with a soul. Right? The body's sort of external here. And he goes in with fear, with trembling, cleanliness of soul, cleanliness of mind. And the cherubs are there. They're there guarding. They're guarding there. So then he says, okay, so if the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, if he goes in peacefully, and he comes out peacefully, very good. Right? In other words, he goes in unscathed, he comes out. He comes out unscathed. If he has the proper intention, he does everything he's supposed to do. If he doesn't merit that, what happens? He gets thrust between the cherubs, those flaming swords, and he gets burnt and he dies. Right? In other words, he walks in, he may not walk out. Depending if he has the merits, if he's pureness of thought, pureness of action. So my Rebbe here says, the Holy of Holies is like the Garden of Eden. Totally spiritual. So then you're telling me, okay, but that's hard to understand. Because if that's true, what does it mean Adam and Eve are walking around the garden? So Adam is God's greatest creation. Being God's greatest creation, he was the closest thing we know to a spiritual being in this world. Even though he's covered in flesh. Skin, sinews, whole 9 yards. Right? He's human, essentially. But the garden is something that is spiritual. So a little bit hard to understand, what's going on over here. But it used to be, when unscrupulous people wanted to be the high priest. right? They wouldn't live out the year. Why? Because during the year, they're going to have to go into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. And if they're not worthy, they die. So I don't know exactly what the benefit over here is. It could be the power, ego, all that. But if you're not on the level, you walk in the Holy of Holies, you're dead. Right? This is what the Medrash says. He walks in with peace, everything's good. He comes out with peace. He doesn't, he's dead. Right? Nothing in between over here. He's going to get burnt, soul's going to be taken out, and that's it. Right? We're going to see, they attach this, something metal to his leg so they can pull him out, if he doesn't make it. So very hard to understand. Someone who wanted to be the high priest and he wasn't fitting, he's going to die. You're going to say, but I want to go in. Maybe deep down, maybe think they're not going to die. But they, but I want to see God face to face. No one sees God face to face and lives. All right, what the Torah tells me, clear. At the same time over here, I don't know if it's about ego. I know it's just the thrill. Going to see God face to face, but you're not going to come out alive. Maybe for a split second and you die. So I'm not so sure what the enjoyment of that. It could be, again. It's just that being the high priest, you got a lot of power. Seemingly you got a lot of power. But make no mistake, in this case, you ain't coming out alive. Right? That's not going to happen. That 100% is not going to happen. Because if he didn't merit it, he goes between the two cherubs and he gets burnt. And he dies. Now, what happens? Kohen Gadol goes in. And there are two things he's praying for. Right? We're going to see. We get there today. Speak about the speak about the Sir Mishtaleach, right? The goats that sent out and killed, right? The Sir Azazel, we'll see what that is. We get there. So there are two things going on. Kohen Gadol, the high priest, is praying for what? For his family, for himself, for atonement. But guess what? He's also praying for who? For everybody else. The entire Jewish nation. The Rebbe here says he's on such a high level. So at that time, when he goes in, he's praying for the masses. He's praying for the Jewish people. And what happens? But when it comes to physical things, you got to understand the Kohen Gadol is praying for their well-being. So what's he praying for? What essentially is he praying for? You'll say he's praying for physicality, for physical things, and praying for spiritual things. Now, what's the problem? He goes in, we just said, it's like he sheds his body. He's totally spiritual. So as he's praying for the needs of the Jewish people, how is that possible? Seemingly impossible. Because right now he's not human. Right now it's like he sheds everything and he's totally spiritual. He's like an angel. So if he's going to pray for the benefit of the masses of the Jewish people in physical terms, how is that possible? Right? Rebbe here says, how can it be? He's going to learn merit for the Jewish people. Something's far from him. Because he's not there physically, technically. He's there spiritually. Oh, but when he comes out to the outer parts, then he's like a human. When he goes further in, he's like an angel. When he comes further out, he goes back to being human. And therefore, his prayer is going to help. Right? And that's what the Mishnah in Yuma talks about in page 42. 42 over there. The interesting thing, if he's totally spiritual, you're not praying for the masses here for their physical needs. So Rabbi says, once he goes out to the outer parts, then he gets his body back, so to speak. That's a different issue. He can pray there for their physical needs. But when he's deep in, and he's in the Holy of Holies, totally spiritual. Totally spiritual. Then he brings down the Zohar Kodesh. Brings down according to Kabbalah. Right? I'm not going to go too much into Kabbalah here. But he says that, what do? They attached this chain that was made out of gold. They attached it to his leg. Why did they attach it to his leg? Because if he dies, they'll pull him out. That's what they're going to use it for. They're going to pull him out. And what does he hear? He heard the voice, or the sound, let's say better, the sounds of the cherub singing. And he would bring the incense, and there would be a, it would be like some sort of peach fragrance, some sort of fragrance, and he would spread it all over. Right? Can't see God face to face. That's why he has to bring incense. One of the things that seemingly Nadav and Avihu, they brought a strange fire. They didn't bring incense. Right? So seeing God face to face, obviously forbidden. So here, he spreads it out all over. And then the Kohen prays. And he prays with great joy, great intention. And he goes behind him and he comes out. Right? And then he prays. So a pretty amazing thing here. He has to have merits. He has to have purity. Purity of soul. Purity of mind. In order that he's going to come out okay. Now, the mind-boggling idea, they say, Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Yochanan, the high priest. The high priest for 80 years. And after 80 years, it became a tzaduki. Became a heretic. Very, very difficult to understand. That means he went in and out of the Holy of Holies 80 times. Unscathed. No blemishes. Didn't die. You're talking someone at a particularly high spiritual level. And goes in like an angel, comes out, prays, takes care of everything. Himself, the Jewish people. And he comes out unscathed. After 80 years, he's on that level, then he becomes a heretic. Very hard to understand. Very, very hard to understand. Because you see, people weren't on the level, they died. Clear as day, they died. So here there are a number of things going on that Maria points out. One of them is Kohen Gadol goes in the Holy of Holies. He goes in as a pure soul. At the same time, he's going to pray for the needs of the people, not while he's fully in. When he comes a little further out, then he's more human. Because otherwise, if he's a pure soul, he doesn't have any contact of physicality. An angel, what are you going to say? What do? They eat, they drink? No. They're totally spiritual. They do whatever God tells them to do. But the high priest is sort of a hybrid over here, a little bit. He goes in as a pure soul, comes out a little bit further, he comes out human. How that exactly works, don't know. But if he merits it, he comes out in peace. If he doesn't, he's dead. Nothing in between. Risky business. Being the high priest. And what the high priest has to do on Yom Kippur. Not so warm either. Gotta, heat up the floor. You take off his clothes 5 times. Right? It's not an easy thing. But what's the hardest thing? What's the hardest thing over here? With all the physical things he has to do on Yom Kippur, and he's fasting, and he's not eating, he's not drinking, you'll say, well, that's hard enough. True? Very, very true. What about his mindset? What about where his mind is? Pureness of mind, pureness of thoughts. And he has to concentrate 100% on what he's doing. And if he doesn't, little slip up, he's finished. Finished. Gotta be just about perfect. I don't think there's that much leeway over here. Because again, the closer you are to the king, minor infraction, you get zapped. You pay the price. And here's like trepidation. Right, Mary says he goes in with fear, unbelievable fear. He's like sweating. He has a, be pure of mind, not just the body. And if he's not focused, Kaufman's language, he's toast. Why? When the Kohen Gadol used to come out, he used to make a big party afterwards. They survived. He came out. He didn't die. They didn't have to drag him out. It's a huge thing. So you see the high priest at a high level. Very high level spiritual. Seemingly, my Rebbe here says he goes in like an angel. He says because, as the Medrash says, it's like Gan Eden. The Holy of Holies is like the status of Gan Eden. So what do we think of paradise in the next world? Because I get this question a lot. People ask, okay, we're not going to drink, we're not going to eat, we're going to be basking in God's glory, going to be learning Torah, whatever level. There's a physical Garden of Eden. We don't know where that is today. Nobody knows. There's a spiritual Garden Eden. The spiritual Garden Eden is, as it sounds, spiritual. Basking in God's glory. Getting the reward for the mitzvahs that we've done in this world. Right? There's a soul world that, the soul goes to before it can get there. It's after the soul gets judged and all that. But that's where the eternal reward is going to be. And that eternal reward is eternal. Means forever. Soul has to get fixed up, whatever. But if the soul merits it, tremendous. I want to make one very subtle point. I don't think it's subtle. I think it's pretty direct. And people get caught up in this stuff. It's interesting. Definitely much, esoteric, very esoteric. Speak about spiritual forces. Speak about different levels and, in paradise and learning from God and all this. We don't even know what that means in general. Like my Rebbe said, I've never met anyone been in that world and come back. But I get questions, from many, many people about what's going to be there. Is it going to be like this? We got to know it. Let me ask the $1 million question, $1.5 million question. We understand there's something called paradise. We understand there's some place we're going to go. Hopefully, there's anything left of our soul. Now we're going to get reward. I understand it's a big Christian idea. But at the end of the day, we're in this world to toil. We struggle. Many different things. But we're here to toil, to learn to the best of our ability. Yeah, there'll be people out there, speak about this and different levels of hell and that's beautiful. It's good to scare people. I think people should have an awareness. Read the book, Derech Hashem, The Way of God by the Ramchal. Talks about spiritual forces. Talks about how these things work. Yeah, it's all steeped in Kabbalah, but he's not giving that much detail. He's just telling you, how things are set up and how it works. Now, sometimes people ask questions because they ask questions. Other times, no, I really want to know, and what's it going to be like? And well, then let me ask. What in the world does it matter? Why are some people, so caught up in it? I understand it's more esoteric, it's Kabbalah, it's a lot of things. Well, someone's in the process of conversion, or even better, someone is a non-Jew, is a Noahide, not going to convert. Does this really matter? Certainly not for now. It's deep, deep stuff. It's ironic. People who can't read Hebrew, who've never really learned, are asking fundamental questions in Kabbalah. So I'm a pretty simple person. I guess I understand to a certain extent, Christianity is about heaven and hell. You don't believe in JC, you're frying hell forever. And heaven is whatever it is. So understand that concept's blown to shreds. Totally destroyed because they're wrong. You read the Iliad, the Odyssey, certainly, God's fighting this, that's wrong. Islam is wrong. All these things are wrong. So I say, but okay, now I want to learn the truth. Now I finally got to the truth. So again, I'll ask the $1.5 million question. If anyone ever wants to study higher mathematics, you want to study calculus, you can't do it without trigonometry or algebra. You want to run, you can't run till you learn how to crawl and walk. But people, they want to reach thousands of levels above where they're holding. Well, that's a waste of time. Yeah, but it's a waste of time. And what matter? Well, what does it matter anyway? And what different levels of hell there are, this, that. Aren't there more practical things to know? I'll give free advice. Yeah, you want to see how far this goes? Person has the merit, a Jew, JIT, has the merit to go in front of a rabbinical court. Go ask him these questions. Right? I dare anybody. Go ask a rabbinical court these type of questions. Either they're going to laugh. If they don't laugh, they're not going to take you that seriously because they want to know what you know practically. They want to know what's the blessing over strawberry. They want to know what are 39 forbidden things of work that you can't do on Shabbos. They want to know what the 13 principles of faith are. This, if they were to ask, there are some rabbinical courts that have, ask hundreds of questions. So let's say rabbinical court asks 250 questions. Let's say, where this question comes up? About 997. And further, buried. I understand, it's interesting. But, the Mishnah Pirkei Avos one day probably about 110. I'll get there. It says the person has to know their place. And unfortunately, what we see is that people want to jump levels. Some of it I would agree. I would agree that it's curiosity. Come out of Christianity. They want to know. But you have to understand it's steeped 100% in Kabbalah. Right? If it's steeped in Kabbalah, who's learning Kabbalah here? You're certainly not going to get it from me. The other people out there want to speak about it. Good luck. Let them speak about it. Waste of time, my opinion. The waste of time. You talk about spiritual worlds, okay? There are spiritual worlds out there. You talk about a spiritual person, right? Someone asks about a spiritual level. Is there any way of defining different levels? If I told you, I have to kill you. How do we know what different spiritual levels there are? You want to define what fear of heaven really is? This fear of heaven that Rav Chaim Kanievsky Zatzal had. A blessed memory. The fear of heaven with the Vilna Gaon had. Is that the same? I don't think it's the same. Totally not the same. I just heard earlier someone said that they say that Vilna Gaon knew 25,000 books by heart. 25,000 by heart. So his level of fear of heaven, way up there. You want to put a number on it? I have no idea what the number would be. But his soul was so great, he could have been the generation of Rashi, been great. We don't know. There are different levels. What, the Aleph Bays of levels out there? Each person is different. How they view things is going to be different. Their level of fear of heaven is going to be different. You're gonna categorize it 1 to 25? I don't think so. It's gonna be hard to categorize. Because a lot of different factors, going on. Do we know what we have to measure up to? So I'll tell you the following story. But Baruch Ber, who was head of the yeshiva in Kamenetz, a blessed memory, he said, I strive to be like Rabbi Akiva Eger. Torah giant of the previous generation. His previous generation. He said, and I became a Baruch Ber. I reached whatever level I was supposed to reach. But he said, if I started out and I said, I want to be like Baruch Ber, I wouldn't even reach that. So he's saying Rabbi Akiva Eger is much greater than him. Much, much greater than him. So he said, if I try and reach him, I may not reach him, but at least, I'll be somewhere. Like my Rebbe says, that if you shoot for the moon, you may not reach the moon. Right? At the same time, you may not get there, but you have to strive for something. If a person strives to a minimal level, you may not reach that. Got to have goals. What levels? There are levels. Because the person will see, after they die and they'll see their portion of the world to come, they'll see people behind them, people above them. I just saw earlier also, someone came to Elijah the prophet in a marketplace and asked him, who's the Ben Olam Haba? Who around here, imagine the marketplace, who's got the status of being a person who's going to have a portion of the world to come? So he said, oh, look at this guy over here. Right? He's got a very high level in heaven. Looked at him. It's a clown. Making people laugh, making jokes, this, that. So he said, okay, I got to find out what's with this guy. So he spoke to him. And he said, yeah, my goal in life is to make people happy. And even someone let's say, I couldn't make, he's got a job. That's what he does. He's a clown. So he goes around trying to make people happy. So he said that if there's someone I can't, I see that, they're not reacting or whatever, off time, I'll go work on them. I'll go, lifting mishur sadin. Beyond the letter of the law. Not part of my job. So his goal was to cheer up people that were down. Doesn't say anything, about the sphere of heaven. Doesn't say how much he learned. Doesn't say anything. Tells that story. So it's not just all about what we learn either. Maybe it's about how we affect others. How it affects us in general. There are no, can we pinpoint what exactly the levels are? We can't. I mean, it could be someone will call me out and say, no, different levels according to Kabbalah. This, okay, maybe there are. Could very well be. Very well be. The Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, there's a minimal level a person has to get to in order to have a portion of the world to come. Now, guess what? The Ramchal does not say what that is. He was very much steeped in Kabbalah. He didn't answer. He said, but there's a minimal level that a person has to reach in order to have a portion of the world to come. So you're going to say, what level is that? We don't know. I'll make a guess. My guess is in Psalms 34, where the Torah says, talking about not speaking Lashon Hara, it says you should stay away from evil and do good. So I would venture to say, if people today would stay away from evil, they got about a 98% chance of having a portion of the world to come. Just staying away from evil. What about doing good? As the verse continues, no, that's extra. Again, is my explanation. Why do I say it's extra? Because we're living in a cream puff generation. It's enough just to stay away from the street. They always say, my travels here and there, I see people with smartphones, thank God I don't have one. And, there's a common theme. The common thing is they barely look up for 1 second. They're too busy with their head stuck in the phone. Okay, person needs it. Make a phone call. This, that. You have to hold on to it for every last second. Hear it beep. Oh, got an email. Oh, got a text. Oh, got this. Person needs it one thing. I think it's overkill. And how much time is wasted. But that's not really the point. The point is, there's a lot of extraneous things that are out there that don't matter one lick in our everyday life. Not one lick. Why do I say that? Because it doesn't matter. These things don't matter. Is it nice to know about, think about, a person could suffer for what they've done, their actions have repercussions, yeah. We have to take a cheshbon and nefesh every day. We have to, think about what I've done during the day, what have I accomplished, what I didn't accomplish, what I want to hope to accomplish. We have to know where we're holding, really. These other things, like, I asked my Rebbe once many years ago about something. He goes, you learning Kabbalah? So I was like, no, I saw this commentary, whatever. So I asked him about it. He said, yeah, I can explain it to you, but it'd take too long. So I said, okay. I took off my watch, put it on the table. I said, I got all day. Let's go. I'm ready. And he's like, your wife's calling you. Go home. So that was that. But he gave me a blessing before I left. He gave me a blessing. He said, listen, you learn what you need to learn. You learn Torah, you learn the entire Gemara, you learn, the commentaries, this and that. Give you a blessing, you should also learn that. But he said, you have to know your place. I knew my place. I was just asking. Maybe give me an answer. Right? You have to know your place. I understand these things are interesting. I understand, okay, what's it going to look like? What's that? In the bigger scheme of things, we don't know. Essentially, we don't know. People steeped in Kabbalah can tell you this, tell you that, but, bottom line for us simple people, myself included, what does it matter? Doesn't matter. It's not something we're going to get concrete ideas, because there could be contradictions, different things. It could be other factors outweigh. You got someone who keeps Torah mitzvahs, and let's say comes to giving charity, they gave with a sour face, and they lost a lot of their mitzvahs along the way. So they're on a lower level than someone who kept less, seemingly, but did it better. So you're going to say, what's the score in that? I don't know. It's like a golf cart. I don't know. Okay, I can -7 over here, +2 over there. Well, what do the numbers look like? I can't tell you. I can say one thing, and that is we have to worry about ourselves. We have to worry about what we do. We have to worry about what we think. We have to worry about what we see. And we got to work hard. That's what we have to do. Forget about politics, forget about sports, forget about all the things that distract us. All these things don't mean diddly in the bigger scheme of things. Just knowing to stay away from bad things, that for this generation, for a lot of people, that's enough. That's Olam Haba. That's it. Because most people are not doing that. Most people totally not doing that. I said tongue in cheek, you want to do, doing good, okay, that's a bonus. But staying away from evil, yeah, that's the obligation. That's 99% of the game. Anything over that's a bonus. Total bonus. So someone says, no more kitten videos, right? Again, from what the little that I do know, and we're going to have to answer for these things. What are we going to answer? It was fun. At that point, as a pure soul, you're in trouble. There are a lot of distractions in this world. A lot of distractions. I think some people get caught up, in certain things that don't really matter. Again, I was very much in Israeli politics years ago. My Rebbe asked me, he's like, are you happy the way God runs the world 95% of the time? I'm like, yeah, I guess so. He goes, the other 5%, you're not going to understand anyway. Don't waste your time on this. Forget about the pundits going to say like this, say like that, say like the other thing. And Russia's like this, and it's going to happen in Ukraine, and that. Who cares? What do they know? They're given, quote unquote, their expertise. Does it matter in the long run? It could be wrong. And if they're right, what does it do for me? What does it do for me spiritually? See, we have to live in this world. Living in this world means every second of every day, I have to take responsibility for what I do. For what I do, for what I see, for what I hear, all these things. And I'm going to have to answer. We're all going to have to answer. That's what we have to know. That is absolutely crucial to know. More than that and how it works and punishment. Okay, read the Gate to Repentance by Rabbeinu Yonah. He goes into the severity of sins for transgressing a positive command. Let's say a person eat matzah on Passover. Negative command, desecrated Shabbos. Right? To getting spiritually cut off, death penalty, goes up in levels. So he talks about different mitzvahs that apply to these different things. What you could lose your portion of the world to come, all kinds of things. So again, I would ask the question, beyond that and what I'm supposed to do, what does it really matter? And if a person knows they're going to be in the third level of hell if they desecrate this, unless they totally repent and this and that, how in the world does that help them? It scares them, okay? I would agree. It might scare a person, but it also might deflate a person. It might cause them never do any mitzvahs. Well, I'm stuck here anyway. Now you can repent. There is repentance. right? But there are all these esoterical things going on that people want to know about. A lot of them are contradictory. A lot of them steeped in hiddenness within hiddenness. So even if you uncover some of it, a little bit of it, again, I would get more inspired by seeing videos, reading books about people who had out-of-body experiences and what they talked about and what they saw. That, I think, would make a bigger impression. Because that, they say all the same things. They see their soul hover above the body, going to this great light. They see all the whole life flash before their eyes, exactly what Kabbalah says. You feel the embarrassment, you feel this closeness, this warmth, this other, okay? And they get slapped back to the body, however that happens. And each one has a story, had a relative, this, I don't know, whatever. How they ended up getting another chance to come back to the body. Because if you don't get another chance to come back to the body, guess what? You die. You don't come back. So we're not saying these things aren't interesting. Right? What we're saying over here is it's not worthwhile to think about. You understand there's an idea that a person can suffer for what they do in this world. Okay? Person can understand maybe they're going to suffer a lot. Okay? There's repentance. We have the ability to repent, to do tshuva, to uproot the negative things we've done. But see, we got to work on ourselves. We can't just say, okay, I want to learn these lofty ideas, but what are you doing? Practically, you're not doing very much because you're too busy worrying about these other things that don't matter. In the bigger scheme of things, they don't matter. Oh, what about the end of days? Well, former Christians come out, end of days, huge thing, because they've been brainwashed and lied to by the church. But what's behind it all? Let's see. The Rambam says, don't try and figure it out. Don't try and figure out when the Messiah is going to come, because if you make a mistake, you're going to say, I've been putting it like this and like this, according to what the prophets say and the writings and this and that, and you make a mistake, what happens? You're going to say, it's not true, and that's it. You leave it. So there are contradictions all over Tanakh. Contradictions left and right. What's going to be? So if there are contradictions, how am I going to figure it out? You're going to say, isn't it worthwhile? Many other things to learn. We have to know the Messiah is going to come. We have to know the Messiah is going to come. Very good. One of the 13 principles. We have to believe in if he tarries and it takes a lot of time. Yeah, it's going to be a great war. Some say yes, some say no, some this, some that, whatever. These are interesting things. Not going to say not. But that's not what the essence of Judaism is. The essence of Judaism might be very dry in some ways. Got to make blessings properly. Got to pray properly. Got to keep the holidays properly. I got to learn. I got to review. That's the most important thing for any JIT. The most important thing. The other stuff, extracurricular. Extracurricular. But what's the problem? People make it the essence. People make it's the most important thing. Well, guess what? It's not. Not even close. You think the great rabbis of previous generations said they were worried about this? They weren't worried about this. I mean, some of them trying to figure out, their level. They're busy writing books. They're busy going through the Talmud commentaries, deciding Jewish law, difficult cases. They weren't worried about this stuff. Not saying it's not interesting. But certainly in general, the vast majority of ultra-Orthodox Jews today, that's not the focus. That's totally not the focus. Focus is to learn. Focus is to pray. Focus is to learn Musar, to be a better person, to interact with others. That's the most important thing. These other things, interesting. I'm not going to say it's not interesting. But it seems to me, and I could be wrong, but I hear a lot of people asking the same things in different ways. What about this? but it says in Daniel like this, and it says like this, but what level in God this, like all these different things. What does it matter? That's my question. What does it matter? They're losing, the evil inclinations. Yeah, learn about that. Look at these other commentaries, these other things. You don't even know how to make blessings and what you're supposed to do because you're concentrating on things that don't matter, that aren't crucial to everyday life. Even the 13 principles of faith. I mentioned my conversion class on Thursday or Friday morning early for me. It talks about God is absolute and that God doesn't change. And the Rambam says it's either you choose God or you choose idols. Nothing in between. But do you see Orthodox Jews walking around saying, yeah, God is one, God is unique. We say it by Shema Yisrael. True. Very, very true. And our intention should be God is past, present, future. And God runs the world. You're right, God doesn't change. But there are certain things, even by divine providence, it doesn't matter hierarchy, right? In other words, you look at it in an army. Who's in charge, really? Certainly in the States. We use the States as an example. Who's in charge of the army? President. That's pretty scary. We're not going to go there. But okay, he's commander-in-chief. He's commander-in-chief. Now, someone who's in the army, does he have to answer to the president? No. If he wants, a pass to go away for the weekend, he's got to go to a superior. He's got to go to a sergeant, whoever. It's a hierarchy in commands. But who does the sergeant get his rank from? The major. And the major from, it goes up. But they don't have to answer. They have to answer the person above him. They're not answering the commander-in-chief. I don't know if the commander-in-chief could answer them. That's a different problem. But it's a hierarchy of power. If it's a hierarchy of power, right, all these other things don't matter. We have to understand God's the one in charge. God's the one who runs the world. Okay, I have to live. I have to live in this world. I have to function. I have to work hard, all these things, right? That's all true, but I have to remember God's the one in charge. He's the one calling the shots. You know who's the one not calling the shots? Not my boss, not anybody else. Yeah, you have to toe the line. You have to do what they want, this and that. And guess what? You can also lose your job for, no reason, essentially. So what, in the bigger scheme of things, who's running things? The boss or the big boss? So the big boss is using this little boss to get to you. But you know what? People always say, oh, it's bad. And it looks really bad. Yeah, it could, but guess what? Even when something like that happens, other doors get open. I can tell you, I've been down and out a number of times. Other doors open, like overnight. Overnight. Didn't mean I'd have difficulty. Doesn't mean life isn't hard, right? But yeah, there are messages we get. So all these other, but this and that and the other thing, all these different things. You know what? It don't matter. It doesn't matter. Why doesn't it matter? Because they're only pawns. God's only using them like a stick. So we're going to say, oh, this person did this person backbited, got me fired together. It doesn't matter what happened. God's the one calling the shots. So even the person above us, does it matter in hierarchy? Yeah, it matters if we're going to get paid, for a job. It matters in other things. That's true, practically speaking, but you can't forget who's the one in charge. You can't forget that, right? So, again, so the Rambam says, when it comes to God's uniqueness, or really God's absoluteness, where do we learn it out from? Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. God doesn't change. God is unique in the world. So Jews, men, so we're going to say it twice a day. But we have to remember, it's not just about saying it. It's about what it means. It means living with the fact that God runs the world. Well, guess what? If a person had a bill today, to pay, the electricity is about to get cut off, I don't think you're thinking about the stars, the moon, and what's going on in Gan Eden. and how things work. I don't think you're thinking about that. You're worried you don't want your electricity cut off. We forget what's most important. People cannot lose focus. It's an easy way to lose focus. Fun, might be interesting. You can learn about, being in the spiritual wilderness, what they call kafakela. One explanation, like being slingshot from one end of the world to the other till you get your final rest, being chased by these destructive angels. How inspiring is that to somebody? Knowing that if you did certain transgressions, whatever they may be, right? That's not really the purpose here, right? But how inspiring is that, knowing that, you can get chased from, around the universe, get caught up here, this and that, scared out of your wits, until a person gets to the final rest. Person feel better? Maybe just take a tranquilizer. Maybe. Again, person, knows about these things. Good. So now there's severe punishment we could be up against. Doesn't that mean I got to be careful what I say? Doesn't it mean I have to be careful when I make blessings, when I keep Shabbos, other things? Isn't that more crucial? Yeah, it's more crucial. And even a non-Jew doesn't convert. We're not going to exclude that. And they have to keep things that are logical according to the Torah. And they have to learn. They also have to be careful a lot of things as a, not as an obligation per se. I would say as what would I call it? It's something where you're not obligated, but it's a good thing to do. Right? It'd be a good thing to do. They also have to be careful what they do. Say it's not the same level. They're not going to get the same reward because they don't have so many mitzvahs. Where are they going to end up? This and that, right? So the Ramchal says they're going to end up in a different spiritual world. They're not going to end up in our spiritual world. Why not? Because they don't have as many mitzvahs. They can have their own world. Could be they merit maybe some part of our spiritual world, maybe in some ways. But that's what the Ramchal says. Okay. Yeah, I got 25,000 questions on that. Move on. Person that doesn't have the same soul makeup. You don't have as many mitzvahs. You don't go to the same place. That's very much Steve and Kabbalah. 100%. So a person knows that, okay, you want to convert, you want the good and the bad, everything in all one shot, okay. If you don't want that, that's where you're going to end up. That's where you're going to end up if you do the right thing. You want to know more about that, what it looks like, what levels? I mean, for a Noahide, it's a lot worse. Because there are a number of things a Noahide does, they're punishable by death if they transgress unless they repent. So for them, it's a little more clear cut. Why? Because these things are universal. So if it's universal, got to be a heck of a lot more careful. Now, does that mean they have to watch their eyes? Not necessarily. It'd be a good thing, a moral imperative. That's what I would think. It'd be a moral imperative, but they're not liable. But they also have to learn. They have to also have spiritual lives and not waste their lives, even if they're not obligated in certain things. That takes them away from godliness, even though they're not going to get punished for it. Can non-Jew watch movies? Yeah. Right? It wouldn't be an issue. People are going to swear. Maybe there's a little bit of immorality there, or a lot, or whatever. They're going to be liable? Not necessarily. As a moral imperative, I'd say, yeah, it's poison. I wouldn't do it. But they're not going to be liable. They say, but it's a soul. And it's again, we don't want to get carried away. We want to stay focused. And it's very, very easy to lose focus. Very, very easy to lose focus. So someone's like, well, if I have a question about heaven and hell, I'm not going to ask you. Okay, so go somewhere else. Go someone else to ask the question. Someone asked me something recently. I sent them a video. Say, here, watch this. Okay, they're really bothered by it. Okay? So I have a lot of people bothered by a number of things that in the bigger scheme of things, of my everyday life, it doesn't matter diddly. Doesn't matter anything, practically. There's heaven and hell, good. You're going to get punished maybe severely for things you do, things you saw, unless you totally repent. Okay, good. So now what? Now what? So you got to learn, and you got to learn more, and you got to review, and all these things. You got to do things that are practical. You got to be normal. Things that are not practical, not worth it. It's a tangent. I looked up something the other day, whatever, I had a few minutes. So it's okay. I looked up this thing about Mamzer. I spoke about last week. I said, all right, let's see what my Rebbe speaks about. I had a few minutes, whatever. So I delved into it a little bit. Whatever. I'm not going to spend, I got a certain amount of time to learn. I'm not spending 2 hours on this. I had a few minutes. I gave myself a certain amount of time. Because I know it's very easy. You look up this and you look up something else and you see something else and then whatever. So then I could have taken easily. I could have looked up a whole bunch of things. It could have taken me 20 minutes to half an hour. Easy. But I know I had other things to do. Person got to be, when it comes to learning in general, you got to be super focused. And if you're not super focused, what's going to happen? You're going to go off on tangents and you're not going to know anything. You're not going to know what you need to do. Again, if it's extracurricular reading, then that's good. That's what you want to do. Fine. Right? But it's not the essence of what you should be doing. Now, someone will say, how do you know that's the essence of what they're doing? I don't. But if I get people asking me the same question on different things, on similar things, I assume that's what they're focusing on. Or that's what's bothering them. They're listening to anything else, could be. They're learning other things, I hope so. This is more than a digression. On a scale of 1 to 10 in importance, for a JIT or a Noahide, this is about number 250,520. That's what comes up. I mean, I don't know, I just made up the number, but it comes up pretty far down the line. Yeah, it's interesting. Not the focus. If I would bring this up to my Rebbe, just laugh. I give an example. Because I asked him this question. I didn't tell you what the question was. I asked him, I was learning in the Gadita. What's in the Gadita on the Talmud? Gadita on the Talmud is like an esoteric story. So a friend of mine would say you can learn it in 5 minutes or you can learn it in 5 years, right? Very deep things sometimes coming out of these, esoteric statements or whatever. So I saw a Gemara. It says that Eliyahu Navi, the prophet, was in a graveyard. Now, it's a little bit of a problem. He was a Kohen. How could he be in the graveyard? Right? How could he make himself impure? So anyway, one of the great commentaries on these esoteric Gemaras is called the Ben Ish Chai. Ben Ish Chai lived more than 100 years ago. And he wasn't the chief rabbi of Baghdad, but he wrote about 60, 70 different books. Unbelievable, rabbinic authority. And he used to give over these esoteric explanations, to people that learned in the synagogue, people that he prayed with, simple people. He used to give this over. So anytime I look at it, it's either you understand it very simply or it's Kabbalah. There's nothing in between. There's nothing in between, usually. So anyway, so I'm looking this thing up. And it says, there are 2 ideas of Eliyahu Navi. 2 different, aspects, let's say, of Eliyahu Navi, of Elijah the prophet. There's Eliyahu Navi. There's Eliyahu HaTishbi. I said, okay, very good. He went this whole explanation. No idea what he was talking about. So I went to see my Rebbe about it. And many years ago, more than probably 30 years, no, 20 years. More than 20 years ago, let's say. And he looked at me. And I said, what is this thing? There's 2 different aspects of, Eliyahu Navi, Tishbi. And he asked me, he said, what are you learning Kabbalah? So I said, no, it's an explicit Ben Ish Chai. I said, it's a Ben Ish Chai. It's Gemara and whatever. So he smiled and he says, yeah, it's not for you. I said, I know it's not for me, but I said, what does it mean? Exactly. So anyway, there was this whole thing. I can explain to you. It take too long. It took off my watch. It threw me out. Told me to go home. But he said, he looked at me straight in the face and he said, what are you worried about here? You saw it. Okay. You understand there's such an idea. There's such a concept. It's a Kabbalistic concept. You're not ready for it. Move on. So it's not for you. Not for you now. But he did, again, he did give me a blessing and say, okay, when you're ready to get to that level, you get there. And eventually you should learn it. But, it's not for now. And it's not for me now either. But, that was it. That was like 30 seconds. And he gave like a minute. First of all, I looked at him and he laughed. That was the first thing. I mean, I could have not said anything. He could have laughed. But, he laughed. He laughed. He said, it's a good thing you know such a thing. Next. That was it. He's like, what are you worried about? He said, this bothers you? I was like, no, I'm just interested in, in this idea. So he's very practical. His head is in the clouds, but he's very much grounded in this world. Very practical. He said, it's a good thing you know such a thing. Move on. And he said, I give you a blessing. You should learn that also. What's he telling you? Don't get bogged down. These are things not to get bogged down in. There are people that don't know anything. They go to a Chabad house. What do they start teaching them? Tanya. Tanya is very complex. Not that I've learned it. Very much steeped in Chassidus and Kabbalah. Now, if someone's very good, they can water it down. Explain to someone on their level. This is very complicated things. Certainly not for a JIT, certainly not for a non-Jew. A non to be learning this. It's not for them. Somewhere down the line, they have more knowledge. Okay. Right? But again, a person cannot jump too high. They cannot jump too high. It can also have a negative effect as well. People I don't think are necessarily so aware. These things that people may end up jumping. Someone here said, okay, even before I get that, okay. Someone asked, wow, doesn't know about hell in detail, keep away from sinning. Does it? I don't know if it does. If you were Sephardic, and you mentioned about heaven and hell, that'll scare them because they're closer to the Masorah. They're closer to this tradition. So that I would hear would have an effect. But knowing about the intricacies of heaven and hell, that's going to have an effect, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to have an effect. Is it going to stop a person from sinning? Right? If the person's overcome by the evil inclination, what does the Gemara say a person should do? They should learn Torah. That doesn't work. Sorry, you should say the Schmod first. If that doesn't stop you, you should learn Torah. Drag yourself to a study hall, learn Torah. If you can't do that, learn Torah. If that doesn't work, think of the day of your death. Now, I would ask the $1.5 million question. If you were to focus on the last thing, think about, in 3 minutes or whatever, you are now going to be on the other side. Think about what you're going to have to answer for. Think about all the actions you've done that are bad, that you're going to have to answer for. Isn't that going to put the fear of God in you more? The intricacies of heaven and hell are not necessarily going to do that. Hell's not necessarily going to do that. So there are 7 levels. So if a person desecrates Shabbos, they get stuck in the 6th level. Repentance is not going to help so much. I mean, it will, but whatever. Let's just say, how does that help you? See, if I would hear that, in general, what would I say? I would say, okay, and this one, someone said that to me. And they said, but I'm going to be stuck in the 6th level, let's say. And I can't get out of hell. Repentance always helps. But let's say, according to Kabbalah, it's going to be really, really hard to get out of hell. Really, really hard. I'm not going to say impossible. Let's just say really, really hard. Now, what did that person say to me? That person said to me, if it's going to be really, really, really hard, why should I bother keeping Torah and mitzvahs? So if a person knows the intricacies of hell and they know, wow, they're going to get stuck, and how do they know they're going to survive? Even better question. How do they know the soul's not going to get spiritually destroyed? How does that make you feel wanting to be a Noahide or as a Jew? How is that going to inspire a person? Is that going to keep them from sinning? Think about the day of your death. Is that going to keep you from sinning? You could think about it till tomorrow. I don't know. Depends, that someone asked before. Depends what level you're on. If that's enough to stop you, very good. If I'm thinking about all these different things that can happen and how it's going to stop you, okay. Is it a guarantee? Thinking of the day of your death's no guarantee. That's certainly no guarantee. So thinking about different aspects of how that's going to help me, maybe, maybe not. But see, what could it do? It can make me realize I'm so small and I make this mistake, that mistake, and I'm going to go to hell anyway. Some people could say, so what's the difference? Why bother? I'm telling you, I've heard this as an argument. And that person didn't want to keep Torah or mitzvahs. He was a Jew coming back to Judaism. But guess what? His soul got crushed. Crushed. For some people, fear is good. Not going to argue that. Some people like fear. And they're going to think more about what they do. The Beis HaLevi, the father of Rav Chaim Brisker, every single day, except on Shabbos or a festival, put his hands over fire. By the end of his life, his hands were like brown, black. Why? Because every day he wanted to feel what the fire of hell was going to be like. You want to do that? You can do that. I don't think anyone in this generation is doing that. I don't think anyone in the last generation really doing that either. You're talking more than 300 years ago, 200 years ago. And there weren't the majority of people in his generation doing that. Right? He was a Das Yochid over here. He was he was by himself here. Now, remember, everybody's quoted that story many times. Doesn't say it about anybody else. Different people have different levels of fear of heaven. So you wanted to feel what hell was like, okay? Or what it's going to feel like, okay? I would say, someone try that today. No, I wouldn't tell anyone to do that. You're not holding there. But it could do it, yeah, okay. So we'll get that, give me fear of heaven. The goal over here is to make sure people are normal. We want people on the fringes. Think about the day of your death. I mean, you don't have to go that far. Person say the Schmod, and you have, take on the yoke of heaven. How can I sin? Take on the yoke of heaven, the yoke of mitzvahs. Stop me in my tracks. That doesn't work. You go learn, right? And you start learning something. Realize how holy the Torah is. That doesn't work. Then you think of the day of your death. There's a hierarchy here. We have a question. Commentaries ask us, why don't you think of the day of your death? Well, it's a little bit depressing if you think about it. So that would answer the question. Why don't I think about the intricacies of hell? That's going to help me. Yeah, but that's the last option. And the Gemara says it's the last option. So it can't be a first option. What if the other two don't work? Did you try? Don't tell me they didn't work if you didn't try. And don't tell me you only tried once. Oh, it didn't work. Think. Meditate on the words that drop. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. What does it mean the Lord is one? The Lord is unique. He doesn't change. He's absolute. He's not fickle. How could I spit in his face and do something wrong? Yeah. Then you're going to be totally embarrassed. Shouldn't that be enough to stop a person and distract from sinning? But the Gemara gives you an option. If for whatever reason that doesn't work, then you should sit and learn. Go to a base medrash if you can go to a study hall, see other people learning, get inspired. How could I ever do this? Right? That's the second option. The third option is, you think about the day of your death. But that's not the first option. Right? If a person thinks about the day of their death, it's kind of depressing. The rabbis know what they're talking about here. If you can, there's a level of fear of heaven. It can be a high level of fear of heaven, but it can also be a lot of doom and gloom. We got to live inspired. Living inspired does not mean that, whatever I'm going to keep because I'm afraid I'm going to fry in hell forever. Because what are people going to do? They're going to say, I'm going to fry in hell forever anyway, so why bother doing anything? They're going to say, I wouldn't go that extreme. Well, I know somebody said that. And he kept coming back to the same thing over and over like a parrot. Same thing. But I'm going to find out. I can't do tshuva. I can't. Move on. If you're going to live that way, you'll never keep anything. And you don't want to live in doom and gloom. You understand? Okay. I have to fear God. I have to work hard at that. Someone's going to ask me. I haven't looked yet. Someone's going to ask, come on. How do you have fear of heaven? All right. So maybe we'll address that. But fear of heaven, I'll tell you what the lowest level I saw brought down a number of places. What's the lowest level of fear of heaven? The fear of heaven, but it's the lowest level. Keeping Torah mitzvahs because I'm afraid I'm going to fry in hell forever. That's the lowest level. What's the highest level of fear of heaven? It's called Yiras HaRomim, which means that you're always thinking of God's awesomeness. Read anything Rabbi Victor Miller, blessed memory, wrote. The amazing thing of a seed, of an apple seed. And the DNA goes into an apple seed. And intricacies of all kinds of things in this world. Person can really sin. How awesome God is and what he does. And the miracle, he's talking about bread. Let's read the whole thing about bread. What goes into bread, the miracle of bread. And the whole thing. You go into a shop, you get bread, you think, no, it's a huge miracle. Yeah, it came out from the earth. How did it come out from the earth? How was it made? The whole process. So that shows God's awesomeness. So if God is that awesome, I don't have to think necessarily about the galaxies and that. I can think about the human body and the DNA of the human body and how the DNA works, or the miracle of the eye and what goes on inside the eye, like a super computer, what it can see, what it colors and different things. It's unbelievable. I have to think about heaven and hell. Think about that awesomeness. Think about, if he can do that, imagine what he can do to me. Man, that'll keep me alive. Should, but that's out of love. It's not out of fear. Fear will not necessarily lead you to love of God. Love of God will lead you to fear. Because you understand, how could this be? How could I do something like that and say, wow, it's so easy? It's called desire. It's called Marenu V'Rabbeinu HaYetzer, the evil inclination. So it's easy to figure out how you could do it. I don't think it's so hard. A person 100% is steeped in desire. Whatever the desire is. At that point, he's not thinking about God. Because when a person transgresses, it's called, the Gemara says, Nichnas bo ruach shtus. What goes inside is a stupid thought. That's what goes inside. It's a foolish thought. Have to worry about the news. Don't worry about what's going on in Russia. Read all these things going on. Whoever writes these things, whatever. What's really important? What's important is what I'm doing. What's important is what I think. How I interact with others. How I can raise myself to a higher spiritual level. How I can guard my eyes. Guard what I say. So bottom line of all this is either you're steeped in Torah or you're not. Even if you're a non-Jew. You say, but I don't have these obligations. I'm not saying you do. But there's plenty for non-Jews to learn. And it's not about all the different levels in hell. Right? That's about last on the list. I would put it like way down on the list. Right? Musar, plenty to learn. Jewish philosophy, plenty to learn. Tanakh, plenty to learn. Why does it have to be focused on doom and gloom and all the terrible things? It's good. Again, you have to have fear. You absolutely have to have fear. But guess what? Fear is paralyzing. Right? Imagine, you walk down the street, out of the corner of your eye, you see the bully's been terrorizing you. You walk the other way, you run. Right? So now you can say, well, if I conjure up this bully in my mind, I'm going to stay on the right path. I'm not, no, you're just going to avoid them. You're going to do whatever you can to avoid them. So it doesn't beat you up for your lunch money or worse. But see, if the focus is on that, then only on that, the evil Galatians say, yeah, live in fear. Totally live in fear. So where's the love? Where's the love of God? Where's the love of Torah? Fear does not lead to love. You need fear. We made this clear many times. Fear 100% you need. Is that going to lead a person to say, is that going to lead a person, to love God? When you're too busy worried about, being afraid. Fear is paralyzing. God does not want you to be paralyzed. Rashi says, what's the person allowed to be afraid of? You're not allowed to be afraid in general. What are you allowed to be afraid of? You're allowed to be afraid you might forget Torah. What, don't you have to be afraid of God? Yeah, but again, what level? What level? For some people, it's totally paralyzed. For some people, it's their only focus. If it helps a person, I'll say like this. If focusing on that helps them, keeps them aligned, very good. But I don't think it's going to lead you to love of Torah. Right? My opinion. If it does, great. Most people would say fear of God at that level is not going to lead you to love. Love will lead you to fear. Fear will keep you in line. True. You need a balance. If there's only the level of fear, I don't know, no balance. You need to love also. But again, the person said, wow, you only love God and this and that. You're going to do what you want. You're not going to have that level of fear, okay? That may be true to a certain extent. Depends what your focus is. Love will lead you to understand God is awesome. And he runs the world. And he can take me out in a split second. And he's in charge. That can lead me to fear. God does not want that fear to be paralyzed. That's not what he wants. He wants you to understand what he can do. He wants you to keep, just like a parent has to sometimes punish a child. They don't want to have to, but sometimes they have to. So we have to be disciplined. That's what it is. It's about discipline. But if I only focus on that, it's all negative. I don't see how that's going to stick unless a person's really into all that. And they're into so much fear, it's going to say, oh, I love God so much. You love him because you're afraid he's going to smack you upside the head. Right? That's why you love him. It's not going to lead to love. Unless it's a higher level of fear. But the base of all Judaism is fear. It's true. Not denying that. Question is how far you take it. And I think there are people out there taking it too far. I think people ask me this question over and over. Right? A lot of different people. Similar type of question, but a lot of different people. I don't think it helps them. I think they lose focus. They're just worried about they're going to get punished and this and that. So where's the beauty? So where's the beauty of Torah here? It was all about fear. I'm not so sure a lot of people have seen the beauty of it. They're worried about they're going to fry in hellfire. Someone asked, I thought when we die, we return to our ancestors in the sleep. Well, it is brought down that when a person dies or right before they die, their ancestors come and gather them. Remember, one of my rabbis told me when the mother was dying, she was screaming, she's like, get out of here, like speaking to dead relatives. Because she knew the time was coming. So that is true, but there's also judgment. Seeing relatives, that's before judgment. That's seemingly before judgment over here. There's different hierarchy how things work. right? But I have seen that or I've heard that, yeah, before a person dies, actually, a couple of years ago, there was a story of somebody here, one of my neighbors there, father-in-law passed away, and so right before he passed away, he was in like a semi-coma state, and it was right this very, I don't know, a few hours, whatever it was, or a day before he passed away, he waved to like his dead brother. I was someone there told me, or was telling the story to others that were there. So that means there's a transition going on. The soul's getting ready to leave. So like, this brother, I think, had passed away years ago. But he could see him, no one else could see him. Right? So you can think, oh, this guy's a fruitcake, whatever, but yeah, this is a common thing. Person will see, I'm not saying everybody don't know exactly, it's across the board, but there definitely are people who see, dead relatives before they die. Now, some people can say they have a sixth sense. I've heard this also. They can see, spirits and different things. I don't know. That, that's above me. Could it be true? Could be. Could be. Someone asked, we learn about evil things that we need to avoid. Oh, that's the whole question. Someone asked about the occults, different things, right? So the Mishnah Perek Elbow says you have to know what to answer now because a heretic. Now, some will say, what? I have to learn all of heresy to know how to answer? No. That you don't have to do. What it means is, according to one explanation, it means the heresy in ourselves. And the contradictions in ourselves, we have to answer for that heresy. Not that I have to read all these heretical things in order to know what they are so I can answer. But if a person grew up with it, they know what it is, different issue. Right? I've got this question before. Someone says, I want to keep a New Testament at home. I want to underline passages and, write all over it. So someone comes to me, I can answer them, whatever. Okay. Would I tell someone to go out and buy one? No. If you already had one, it's one thing. You want to use it for that purpose, it's another thing. But would I need to get it in order to, I thought about doing this once. I haven't thought about this more than once. Maybe I should get more well-versed and, whatever, but it's not what I do. Got plenty of other great people, well-versed in it. Should I know more about it? I don't know, good bathroom reading, maybe. But who says I have to read it? I have to know more about it to answer it. There are plenty of answers against it, right? We're not reinventing the wheel. Go to Rabbi Singer, go to Rabbi Skobach, go to others. Plenty of people, world experts in that. Yeah, I have to sit there and go through it in order to answer them. No, I'll know a few things here, a few things there, some things about Islam. Okay. I'm not going to sit there. I'm not going to debate somebody. Right? It's not my area of expertise. Right? So, the idea over here is learning about things that have no bearing on my life. And that might be, not only might be forbidden, might have a negative effect. Sure, I shouldn't learn about it, shouldn't do it. I certainly shouldn't do it. Learning about it, for sure not. What do I have to learn about it for? Or I think someone's going to, maybe someone's going to say, oh, what do you think about this? I don't know. I have to sit there and answer it. If someone confronts you and say, is Zoroastrianism this and good God, bad God, and whatever, what does Judaism have to say about that? Or what would you answer to that? So then you have an easy answer. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Can't believe in more than one God. Right? Torah says the 10 Commandments. Idolatry is forbidden many, many times. Torah tells me. I have to dig into Zoroastrianism and know what it is? No. Could confuse me. Right? Maybe I have a crisis in faith, God forbid. The rabbis did know, certain things about sorcery, and other things, okay. They didn't know what it was, nor to answer questions on it. Who says I have to know that? But no, certain things. It's a Ouija board forbidden and these other things. Okay. This is kind of harmless. This type of stuff. But I have to delve into it and, know every last thing about it. Like a person would analyze the sports page or a financial section or something like that. No. Why would I have to do that? This is a good thing for me to know what it's about. Who says? I would say unless you get confronted. And then if you get confronted, ask somebody. Why did you look it up and get messed up with it? If someone knows about it. Not to mention, it's a waste of time. So what? But, someone's very hammering you. They're arguing you this and that. Okay. Right. But in general, I would say not. Knowing these things and how, and how they're interwoven with music and, and other things. So I'll ask kind of a silly question. I mean, for me, might be, a silly question. So what do you listen to this type of music for? Or any type of music that may have this stuff in it or not. Plenty of good Jewish music out there if you like Jewish music. All right? These other things, TV things, these things, stay away from. 100%. Nothing good will come out of it. Nothing. And no benefit. I'll say one thing. It comes to movies in general, they're putting their own ideas in. That's what Hollywood does. They're trying to get you to think a certain way or out of the box or who knows what. So they're putting their themes subtly or not so subtly, into movies. So you're going to say, I'm not affected by that. I'm a God-fearing Jew or Jew wannabe or whatever. That's not going to have an effect on me. It goes in. Right? The message goes in. You might say, oh, I reject it, but it seeps in. And it can just sit there. And the evil inclination can say, okay, it's there. I'm going to, it's there. I got plenty of time. And then something else could happen. It could fester. It could fester over time. 5 years, 10 years, 6 months, whatever. And then all of a sudden it comes out in a different way that you never would have thought. You're going to say, come on, this, that. They're the biggest brainwashers in the world. Right? The media, the biggest brainwashers in the world. You have to know how to dissect what they say. Come on, what's one of the biggest lies the media has perpetuated, throughout time, throughout history? Well, you got Christianity, that's up there. Right? But you got evolution, and you got this idea that there's a Palestinian people, which I've spoken about before. Not going to get into politics. Biggest myth in the world. If you know anything about Israeli history. Biggest myth. But you know what? Everyone in academia, everyone in the media, right? Everyone in the media will tell you that's the case. And we stole their land. We stole all their land. We persecuted them. It's worse than apartheid. Okay, that's a little bit much, a little bit of a stretch, but that's what they'll tell you. And they've been saying the same lie for years. For years. It's amazing. They don't know diddly about Jewish history, Israeli history. They're not looking at Israeli history. They're looking at what they think they're looking at. Evolution, never been proven, never will be proven. It's all over academia. Because the alternative is only one alternative. That the Bible is true. Story of creation is true. So, you have things like that where, the media wants to portray what it wants to portray. And they can do it subtly. They can do it, in a major way. But you're going to convince them? Oh, you're not going to convince them. They got an agenda. It's like the evil son and the Haggadah. Am I going to convince him? No. I blunt his teeth. I don't even give him an answer. They're not interested in an answer. Oh, why don't you look at Israeli history? Why don't you look at the fact that Mark Twain was here? There was no such thing as the Palestinian people. There was nobody here. Nobody. You want to tell me it happened thousands of years ago? The Ramban came. Nachmanides came. Couldn't find 10 Jews to make a minyan. Where was there a Palestinian people? With the Turks, with the English, where were they? boy, they might have, their buildings must have been swallowed up. There must have been, exile. Plenty of history of what went on, I'm sure. Doesn't exist. They weren't here. They were nomads, if that. But they'll tell you they stole their land and this. Yeah. Rothschild bought up all this land. It was sold. And then, when it came to wars and they lost, who said they get their land back? You're telling me there was a whole entity? Come on. I got a bridge in Brooklyn I could sell you cheap. But that's what everyone says. That's what the media says. Biggest lie out there. One of them. One of the biggest lies out there. Right? And the leftists perpetuated. They don't know their own history. The Israeli leftists. What are you going to say? Mark Twain was a fool? Mark Twain came in the late 1800s. And he said exactly what the prophets say. Israel flattened like a pancake. There's nothing here. Until the early late 1800s. They're going to say he's a quack. Everyone holds the Samuel Langhorne's club, i.e. Mark Twain. They're going to say he's a liar. He's he's got a screw loose. I don't think so. So where are all the Palestinians? Oh, they were hiding. Where they weren't even Jews there. First Jews that came were the students of the Vilna Gaon. Blessed memory. A lot of them died, got malaria, trying to dig out the swamps. Where was everybody? Oh, it's a good question. Where was everybody? Huge lie. But the media are going to perpetuate the same stupid thing. We stole it. We don't deserve it. And even if that would be the case, which I don't agree, but let's say that would be the case. So let them take it back. We know who these people are. What about all the land America took? Legally, killed all the Indians, got rid of the Spanish, right? Got rid of the Mexicans. Oh, that's okay. All right, but you can't have a, hostile entity in your own country. So you gotta get rid of them. Either give to us or die. So what they do, they kill them. They took over the land. Why is that right? Because might makes right. Except in Israel. These poor helpless people, they weren't here. They totally weren't here. Huge, huge lie. This is the first, it won't be the last by the media. Media's got an agenda. They totally have an agenda. What they want to say. Plenty of things they don't say. They cover up also because it doesn't fit their world outlook or the world outlook in general. All right? Won't trust anything they say. You got to dig. You got to know what real history is. Say, oh, that's your opinion. Right? And someone told me this once. I said, you know anything about Jewish history? It's real history? You ever researched it? You ever learned it? No, you looked it up on Wikipedia once. You listen to what the media says, etc. So who made them into a people? We did. The Israelis did. Not that they existed before. So we're our own worst enemy. Okay. But see, there are people obviously have an agenda. When they have an agenda, they don't look at the facts. So I said, oh, you seem pretty confident. I said, it's not a question of confidence. It's a question of knowledge. I said, go look into Israeli history. Tell me if it's true or not. They didn't care. They'll still stay with the same line. Okay. Still say, oh, that's arrogance. No, it's not. Knowledge is power. You want to prove it wrong? Prove it wrong. Show me where it's flawed. Go back to what Mark Twain said. Go back to, history 100 years ago, 150 years ago. Turks were here. Ottomans were here. English were here. Who else was here? Nobody. So what do you do with that? They don't have an answer, but they don't care. They're just going to say the same thing over. It's like dealing with the missionary. You catch them once, they go on to another question. Catch them a second time, They go on to a third question. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. But if you know anything about history, which most people don't, people spew all kinds of things. I don't know anything. I haven't done the research. Haven't done their homework. Okay. So I said, I've done my homework. I've done a lot of research, read a lot of things. What have you read? Nothing. So tell me, what did you read? Show me sources. You're a fanatic. Yeah, I can get a little bit feisty also. So you're telling me that this is all true, but you have nothing to back it up with. It's what I think. Okay? Based on nothing. Somebody asked, how many people know 10 Commandments, how they're applied? Yeah. You'd ask most people that one of the 10 Commandments is don't steal. Yeah, but doesn't mean don't steal. Because there are other places that says don't steal, means don't kidnap. How many people know that? Probably nobody. Very few people know that. Very few people, you're right. They can't name the 10 Commandments. For sure. In the end, again, what is the purpose? What does the person focus on in this world? We focus on what we do. We focus on what we say. We focus on how I have to control my thoughts. And I have to work on how I deal with others. And, a lot of things. A lot of things. But, the day I die, the, different aspects of hell and this and that, most people are not thinking that. It's not part of their psyche. Fear, you have to have. Nothing to talk about. Fear, you have to have. But there's so many much more important things as a JIT or a non-Jew or an OI that you have to know. Focusing on that's a waste of time, right? That's what I would say. Someone asks, right? Again, there's going to be suffering, right? Everyone's going to suffer. They're going to go to hell for a certain amount of time. Fix up the soul, right? Whatever it is, 12 months, 11 months, whatever it is. And, we didn't reach potential. Probably a lot of people don't reach potential. They're going to pay for that. The soul's going to get fixed up and hopefully have a portion of the world to come. Suffering's not a bad thing. It atones for sin. We're not looking to suffer. We don't want to suffer. But it atones. 100% it atones. Not for everything. But, it certainly atones. So if we knew how great suffering was, we'd have some more of it, but we're not masochists. 100% we're not masochists. So, what does my Rebbe say? He says many times, you live in the past, you have no future. Living in the past, I got to think about terrible things I've done. Right? I have to repent. I have to properly repent, and then I have to move on. That doesn't mean you whitewash it. Doesn't mean say, I live in the past, I have no future, move on. No. You got to think. You got to think about what you did. You got to think about what led you to do what you did. And then you have to try and fix it. But if you harp on everything you did in the past, you'll never function. Right? We have to acknowledge what we've done. And then we have to come out and be better. So someone here says, well, some rabbis speak about scary eternal or long-term ones. Yeah, a person can suffer for a long time, potentially. Others speak of washing machine, right? In other words, getting cleansed, true? But you're not going to get cleansed without being punished, without suffering, unless you're on the super high spiritual level, which most people aren't. So there's going to be some suffering. Definitely some suffering. Some people might be more, some people might be less. Could be both over here, right? Could be a long, scary, eternal thing. Could be whitewashing also, right? Meaning, like a washing machine type of thing. But what's the bottom line? There's payback. That's the bottom line. We say it in the Schmod every day. Second paragraph. There are repercussions for what we do. We're going to say that. We're going to say that every day. Every day, twice a day. For men. For a Jewish man. So there's reward and punishment. So, okay, when you're saying that, you have in mind. Certain things to do might be, you might get this, you might get that, you might get the other thing. Think about it for a split second. That's it. And you move on. Focusing on it. Again, I don't necessarily see the benefit. If it inspires someone to get better, okay. A person, it's good to know how it works. That's why I recommend reading the book Derech Hashem. That's what it does. It shows me how it works, how the evil inclination works, how spiritual forces work. Okay. If I spend, if I knew Kabbalah, let's say, am I spending 3-4 hours a day going through it? No. Now, some Kabbalists might have gone through it a lot and this and that, but that's not the essence of their learning, right? Let's make it clear. That's not the essence. The essence of our learning for men is going to be Talmud, Jewish law. For women, it's going to be Jewish law, what they need to do. Musar, Jewish history, like a lot of things, Jewish philosophy, a lot of things. Again, on the bigger scale of things, this is not at the top. I don't believe it's at the top. You got to know about it, true. Now, how it works, okay, to a certain extent, that's it. Why focus on it? That's not what the focus of Judaism is. You want to know what the focus of Judaism is? Read the 13 principles. The Rambam's 13 principles. Prophecy, Moshe Rabbeinu, greatest of all prophets. God is unique in the world. God knows the thoughts of man. God, Moshe Rabbeinu, greatest of all prophets. Resurrection of the dead. Coming to the Messiah. These are crucial things. Crucial things. Reward and punishment is crucial. 100% it's crucial. Not saying it's not crucial. We're saying how much a person should focus on it. I think the people focus on it way too much. Right? That's what I'm saying. Someone here points out very good. Proverbs chapter 1 verse 7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, right? Right? Fools despise wisdom and discipline. I didn't say you don't need fear. You need fear. But your life is not consumed by fear. In general. There are great people, that would think every last second, I fulfill the mitzvah. I didn't, be extra, extra careful. Because for them, that's life. Okay? There is what to be said for such a thing. I don't think most people live in their lives like that. They have to have fear, I agree. I'm just pointing out fear should not be paralyzing. That's all I'm pointing out. And it shouldn't be the focus. You need fear. Everyone says you need fear. And that hopefully should be a deterrent for a person who's not going to sin. Very good. Question is, how far you let it go? That's the question. Someone here points out, but if Israel didn't have the house demolition law, and what does that help exactly? So a terrorist, they kill him, they blow up the house. Okay, so that should be a deterrent. And guess what? The family's still being paid tens of thousands of shekels every month by the Palestinian Authority. Even if the person dies, family's getting the money. So demolition can be a deterrent, right? You go to certain countries, if you're caught doing, if you're caught selling drugs, cut off your hands. That could be a good deterrent. America, what's the percentage of, drug deals or whatever, in prison? Probably a lot. I don't know if it's the highest percentage. But if they say, listen, we catch you dealing and this and that, we're going to cut off your hands. That could be a good deterrent. A lot of people walking around without hands. There are things I agree that are deterrents. I'm just saying that, fear is the beginning, right? It's not the end. It's not the end. There needs to be a mixture. There are people. You tell me, let's say like the Brisker Rav of Israel's dead salvation, God bless the memory. Everything he did was calculated. Unbelievable fear of God and everything he did and blessings and all that. Right? Okay. There are people at that level. There are people at that level. We have to have fears, no question. It should guide, it should be a deterrent. But these other things I think are well beyond. Yeah, you tell me the Briskerov's grandfather put his hand over fire to feel what hell was like. Yeah, he's unique in the generation. Now, if there are other people who did it, we don't know stories. We know stories about him. Okay, different levels. If that would be a deterrent and someone says, this is what I'm going to feel, and it helps them, okay. It's not going to be the norm. That's not this generation. I think this generation has to feel it more. I think we're just too flippant and say, well, God will understand. Depends what we do. I've heard people tell me, yeah, I pray, whatever, and it's all about learning. Yeah, but what about prayer? Isn't prayer pretty important? So my Hasidic side here coming out. Prayer is also pretty crucial. 3 times a day you pray. Prayer is something that needs, I actually have to look up this source. Prayer is something that always needs to be strengthened. It's Gemara and Brachos. Needs to be strengthened. It's a hard thing. You have to work at it. It's got a lot of power. When people say about learning also has a lot of power. But I got to pray 3 times a day. I think people give lip service to prayer in many ways. Some people. It's something that needs to be worked on. Someone asked me a question before. Sorry. Someone asked, Havdalah can be said anytime after nightfall. Yeah, I would say about 30 minutes after nightfall. You can say Havdalah. Someone asked 1% of fear. No, you need more than that. You need more than 1% of fear. But some people will tell you it's got to be like 80%. I don't think it's, what's the exact percentage? Again, I don't believe a person is focused on fear of God, they're going to get the love of God. Yeah, you have to have fear. What percentage? I don't know. I'm not going to put a number on it. Love you for sure, 100% need. And that love should lead to fear. 1% way too low. You need a high level of fear. But fear cannot consume you to the extent where, listen, if you're on the level of the Briskerov or others and every last thing is calculated, that's the way we should live. I'm not saying we live to that standard. We should. And we got to work on that. I think that's true. I just think people take it, too far, and then it's all consuming. That's what I think. What about people who suffer sickness, have all kinds of difficulties in their lives? They're going to go to Gehenna. Maybe not. Maybe they suffer enough in this world. They won't have to go to hell to suffer. Maybe they get all the suffering now. Maybe. That's going to cleanse them. You're 100% right. Sickness, suffering, financial problems, that's going to cleanse a person. Right? That's going to cleanse a person. But at the same time, does it cleanse them 100%? Okay, I'm not God over here. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Maybe they're going to have to suffer also. They're going to have to pay for their transgression. That there's no question. But in order for a person, and I mentioned this before, in order for a person to receive atonement, if they're suffering, they have to acknowledge it. The Mabit, I think, in Beis Elokim, says exactly that. You have to acknowledge the suffering you're getting right now is an atonement for sin. That's what you have to say. If you just say, oh, I'm suffering, whatever, that's not atonement. You have to acknowledge it. But anytime we suffer, it's for sin, or it's for the sin of what our soul has to go through. If we're a reincarnated soul, then our soul has to suffer, or we did something, we went against Kaufman's 614th commandment, don't be stupid, right? So you did something, God said, okay, now you're going to get punished. I didn't tell you to do that, right? So you're going to have to pay for what you've done. True, right? There is payback. Now, how exactly does it work? Let's say I get paid back in this one. Let's say a person has all kinds of, health issues, God forbid, livelihood issues, any number of things that you really suffer. Does that mean, is that for transgression? 100%. right? Let's say. So what's going to be in the next world? Maybe you come in the next world squeaky clean. Maybe you don't have to suffer. I would bet against that. I would say you're probably still going to suffer in the next world also. How much? Don't know. What level? Only God knows that. Someone asked, being single atone for sins. Why would that atone for sins? Mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago that one of the commentators says, actually, let me see. It's right here. One second here. I think it's before. Somebody brought down, thought it was Kuyaka, I don't see it here. Maybe it's. Any case, I saw brought down that if a person is single, a guy, he's going to transgress. Kuyaka here brought down in verse 3. He says the sons of Aaron weren't married. Right? That's one of the things they're accused of, that the reason they die. And he says someone who's not married is filled with hirhure avera, meaning bad thoughts. Bad thoughts. So he says definitely they should be married. Person should be married. Right? The Kuyakar over here makes a general statement. And he says anyone not married is filled of this transgression. Now, you're going to say, what about a Noahide? Is Noahide obligated to be married? Yeah. He's obligated to have kids. 100% he's obligated to have kids. So here the Kuyakar says clear in verse 3 that a person who's not married, a guy, obviously, and the Gemara says better for a woman to be married than not be married. But for a guy, he's going to have all kinds of transgressions of bad thoughts. It's just, that's the nature of the beast. That's the nature of men, of men in general. So you're going to say, but he work on it. This, okay, he's telling you a statement, flat out statement. He says, someone who's not married is filled with hirhure avera, with sins of bad thoughts. Across the board. You're not making any exceptions. Yeah, people can work on it, whatever, doesn't matter. He's telling you, everybody. So a non-Jew should also be married. Why? Because an obligation to have children, populate the world. Doesn't have the same obligation as a Jew to have so many kids and whatever. But, he's got an obligation to populate the world. Someone asked, what's the best time to say the Schmod twice a day? Well, once in the morning, once at night. Right in the morning, just try and say it, I would say before 9 o'clock. And at night, anytime, let's say 20 minutes after sundown, 25 minutes after sundown, right? Up until, technically you can say it all night till dawn. But, whenever a person, again, let's say a person works late, they work till 7, let's say, sundown is, I don't know, sundown 7:30, 7:45, so you can't pray till like 8:15. So, some people pray at the earliest time, let's say 20 minutes, 25 minutes after sundown, because, they think it's late and they don't want to forget and, whatever. But technically you have all night. You have all night to say it. Someone says focus should be on the first commandment. First commandment is right, is God runs the world. Because he took you out of Egypt. Right? That means God intervenes in history. Right? That's very true. You have to think what that means. Again, when we pray, we also have to think what the words mean. Again, we're not concentrating for hours. You should think a little bit, and move on. Shouldn't it be you are afraid of doing something against Hashem because you love him? Yeah. Also, you'll be embarrassed. How can you do such a thing? Look at all the goodness he gives you. Right? Yeah. It's not just about punishment. Right? It's about how could I have done such a thing? Look at all the goodness God gives me. Look at, again, life is hard also. But look at all the goodness, so much to be thankful for. Rav Victor Miller lived his life, never worried about anything. God's the one in control. Nothing's bad, everything's good. Even the bad air is good, because it's there. You don't look at anything as being bad. All right, we're not necessarily at that level, per se, but if you look at things the way they should be, and you look at how the human body works, you look at DNA, you look at a seed of an apple, and you see God's awesomeness, yeah, then you can put that in your mind and say, how could I ever go against that? Look what he does to the human body. No question. That's called his Roman. The fear of God's awesomeness and what he does in the world. You're right. We should be embarrassed what we do, 100%. And a person goes to sleep before their head hits the pillow, and they say, oh, I did this, I did that. You should be embarrassed. We all should be embarrassed. But it's not that feeling, oh, I did that, I'm going to fry now forever. It might be true, and we're going to pay a serious price. But you know what? We have to work hard. We have to work hard. We have to say, you know what? I have to, I'm doing all this because, why would we do this? We want to keep Torah mitzvahs just out of fear. It's not really so much fun. You keep it out of love and then you feel bad, that's for sure. And I'd always venture to say, if God didn't love us, imagine how much worse it would be. You're going to say, Rabbi, come on, I've been through a lot. How much worse can it be? Don't ask. Could be a lot worse. A lot worse. The Vilna Gaon student suffered from unbelievable poverty. He sent them to the hospital to see people who couldn't even feed themselves. And look at how they suffered. They walked into Shabbos like you can't imagine. Didn't have a lot of food. Still suffered in other ways, but guess what? They can move their fingers like this. They don't have arthritis. They can go like this, it doesn't hurt. We have what to be thankful for. Tremendous things to be thankful for. And that's God's goodness. But we could also say, wow, I don't have this, and I don't have that, and that's hard, and this is bad. And yeah, look at it that way also. But then you're not thankful for anything. And that's the worst thing. That's the worst thing. Torah says, don't be an ingrate. You got to be thankful for what you have, what God gives you. Could be a heck of a lot worse, could be. And there are people in tough shape in many ways. But you know what? They're also alive. Someone told me recently, it's like, yeah, I guess the alternative is worse. I said, you're right. You wouldn't be here. It's worse. You can say, hey, but I suffered at this. Nobody goes through life easy. No one has it easy. Some people have money and they're miserable. Some people don't have money and they're flying on air. They're happy with everything they have. It's about mentality. It's about how to look at the world. We complain when it's too cold. We complain when it's too hot. We want it to be San Diego, 75 and, sunny all year round. Right? That's what we want. Life does not work out that way. Just doesn't. So we got to take everything in stride. We have to know how to look at it, and how to process it. Because there are a lot of things we say, oh, this is bad. Really? Go to India. Kids living on the streets. No homes. Starving. That's bad. Go to other places. You'll be living the lap of luxury. Yeah, but I live in, my house is old and paint's falling. You got a house, don't you? Even if a person's rented, get a roof over your head. You're not on the street. You're not starving. Some people eat more, less, whatever, it doesn't matter. Million things to be thankful for. Million things. We complain. Look at what God did for the Jewish people. Took them out of Egypt and all that, and they complain. You're going to start reading these parts in a number of weeks. Missed the fish in Auschwitz. Missed the fish? You missed the fish in Egypt? You missed the water? Don't you remember what it was like in Egypt? I'm in the desert. We don't have anything. Oh, Mother Hubbard, ain't nothing in the cupboard. Forget. So you're talking about the greatest generation in the history of man. How could they forget? It's a good question. Not the topic for now. It's a good question. 100%. Got to have gratitude, right? 10 fingers, 10 toes, And if my kids were born, went straight, make sure they labeled it right, obviously. But, you saw 5 fingers on each hand, 5 toes, head's normal, eyesight's normal. It's a miracle, no question about it. Million things to be thankful for. Million things. And we're very good at complaining. Very good. God's like, I give you this, I give you that. You know what the eye is? The focus of the eye and seeing colors and this and that. You know what the miracle of that? You know what DNA does? I mean, million things. All they do is sit there and complain. One of the worst transgressions a person can do. Be an ingrate and not be thankful for what you have. Yeah. Any other questions? So what happens if a person can't get married, he can't find a wife? Okay. Right? You got to try. Not everyone has the merit to get married. The people who don't get married. Or some people can't get married for different reasons. Okay? Right? It's a mitzvah you didn't do. But see, if even though the Gemara says, for a woman, it's better for her to be married than not married. It doesn't mean she has to marry anybody, per se. For a guy, it's worse. For a guy, it's a lot worse. She's protecting him. She's protecting him from hirhure avera, from bad thoughts. She's protecting him. So you're going to say, well, what happens if you don't get married? Okay, you didn't get married. Still going to protect yourself against what you see. Against bad thoughts, 100%. But if you didn't do it, you didn't do it. I had someone, got married. The wife can't have kids. He says, I want to have kids. So I said, well, either get divorced or but I really want to have kids. It's a mitzvah to have kids. You're right. And if you didn't have kids, you didn't have kids. It's a mitzvah you didn't do. There are many mitzvahs people don't necessarily are able to do. Okay? If you could have done it, you should have. If you got the opportunity, you should, if possible. If it's not possible, okay. So mitzvah you didn't do. Yeah, any other questions? You got none, you're done. I think I'm done also. I'm going to stop here because I'm going to do Tanakh talk, I think, in an hour. I have to find out. Could be, topic's going to be about crazy things Talmud says about non-Jews or seemingly crazy things. So that's going to be about an hour. A little more than an hour, hopefully. And then I'm going to do no hydation, speak about Shabbos, what, if it applies to non-Jews. In any case, I'm going to sign out. I do this every Tuesday and every Sunday, 9:00 Eastern time, 4:00 Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman or at Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism and send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com, whichever